Hey guys, I'm the Depressed Engineer, and today I want to talk about subcontracting and recruiting companies. And I guess that really ties into how I got my first job as well. And so before I start, I realized I haven't been doing these videos consistently as per usual. I went on I went on a business trip in California first, and then I went to Alaska on a cruise, and that was a whole lot of fun. I got to drink glacier water, watch whales, and blackout drunk, drinking Long Island iced teas, and just having a lot of fun, taking pictures of the beautiful landscape out there. Tons of mountains. All the glaciers are super blue, and they break off into little icebergs in the water. It was really cool, and I would definitely recommend going out there and trying that out. I'm gonna just make a quick review here too. I've been reading the 4-Hour Workweek, and I know that the book's been recommended by a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who find a lot of success in their businesses and everything and their work life. And there's a big part of that book tells you about taking mini retirements, and that's kind of what these cruise lines are for me. They end up being little retirements for me, where I get to just go to Alaska or go to Mexico or the Caribbean and just check out stuff and relax and have some drinks and hang out with some friends. So it's just really nice to get out there and get some vacation time in. In any case, I don't know if it's kind of a stupid shirt, but single and too socially awkward to mingle. It's one of my newer shirts I purchased recently. You can honestly just I think I just bought it off of Amazon. You can just do a Google search and find it. So it's not a hard search, because I actually have a few shirts that people actually ask me, hey, where'd you get that? Because I have a shirt that says "This is fine" on it with a little dog on it, and I think I found that on Topatico. But I mean, a lot of times you can just Google search what the shirt says and you can just find it. It's like Google search "This is fine" t-shirt and you'll find it. So in any case, let's get back to topic, where how I got my first job. So I graduated from the University of Toledo with my Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering with a 3.414 GPA. So I've graduated cum laude. That was December of 2013, so right at the very beginning of 2014. So when I first graduated, some backstory, I guess, is our school did internships and co-op programs. So you couldn't really graduate unless you had gotten a co-op. So a lot of people already had jobs lined up when they graduated. They already had jobs with people that they'd done internships with. My problem, and I had a few friends that had this problem as well, was that none of the places I interned at wanted to hire anybody. And it wasn't even necessarily just hiring me, it was like hiring people in general. Especially in the department that I ended up in, they weren't really looking for more engineers. And I don't know, there's a possibility that they just told me that for funsies, and they were just like, man, I really hate that Corey guy. Right? That's always a possibility, who knows? Sometimes you're just not compatible with a place. Although my last internship, I actually really liked that internship, but they said they weren't hiring, so what are you gonna do? I think a big part was they weren't hiring design engineers. They were looking for supplier quality engineers, and I said no, because supplier quality is super boring. And in any case, I'd say maybe 75 to 80%, probably maybe even less than that, I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers, but a lot of people I knew were getting jobs right out of college. And me and a few friends were just like, where do I get one? How does one job? I would like to job too. So we ended up just having to throw our resumes out into the internet pool and just making it rain with frickin' resumes and just trying to figure out where we should go to work. And when you're trying to get your first engineering job, you especially with a bachelor's degree, you really don't know what the heck you want to do. I mean, there's a lot of energy companies, consultant engineering companies. Actually, the one place my one friend went to ended up going back to a consultant engineering job. And it was for like a sewer company or something like that. Like he had to design the electrical stuff for sewer systems, and it was just super boring, and he hated it, and he was just staring at spreadsheets and staring at CAD drawings all day. So after, I'd say about 3 months of sending my resume out there, I finally got something, and it was originally with a company called BAE Systems. Now, the catch was that, and they don't really explain this to you very well outside of school. You kind of have to like look at this on your own. And for me, again, I just got my bachelor's degree, and getting a job was more important than getting a job in what I actually cared about. So, but when I did research on BAE Systems, they actually had a lot of really cool stuff they were doing. So if you go to their website, it's a defense contracting company. They work on a bunch of circuit cards and designs for various electrical systems, either for the government or for commercial products. And it seemed like they're really advanced technologies and really interesting stuff they were working on. So the company that spoke with me was a recruiting company called Aerotech, which they eventually branched off into Easy, which is EASI. I don't know if it's incorporated or LLC. But their Easy subsidiary specializes in hiring engineers. But I think Aerotech still hires engineers for other companies. So it's a recruiting company. They go out and they find people who want jobs, and they say, okay, you're going to work for this company. So it's a very weird situation. So you get a contract, and this is where subcontracting comes in, where if you're working for a contractor under a contract, you're a subcontract. So working for BAE Systems under the contract, which they were contracting for Boeing, left me as a subcontractor. It was kind of odd. And I'm actually currently in that situation again where I'm quote unquote a subcontractor, but they still just call us contractors because they don't like considering their own company a contracting company, which I don't know why. I guess there's a bit of negativity associated with saying subcontract. No, like a lot of people don't like the word sub, I guess. I don't know. In any case, so I took this job right away because, like I said, I was fresh out of college and I wanted a job. They pretty much only gave me interviews with Aerotech. I never sat down with a BAE Systems employee and had an interview with them. So it was very odd to interview with this recruiting company and then never get any information out of the actual company I was working for. Sorry, my chest hurts. Still recovering from that vacation. In any case, so this was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I was graduating out of Toledo, Ohio. So I had to move states, which wasn't a big deal at that point. I mean, it was right across the border. So it was, I'm trying to say, 2 hours away from Toledo. Maybe a little more. It's been so long now, I don't even remember. But, so I ended up having, this was my first experience with moving out of state and eventually getting jobs out of different states, out of different cities, and then eventually moving across the country to Utah, and now I live in Arizona. So it kind of jump-started that whole thing. So this was probably the easier way to get a job, because in my last job that I was just working at in Utah, I was getting sick and tired of working there because things were getting really stagnant and boring. And I had been applying to jobs for about a year, and I had various interviews with a few companies like the Silicon Diode Company, and I think Boeing called me at one point from California, and they gave me what I thought was a really good interview, and somehow I guess I botched it because I never heard back from them ever again. So there were a lot of times where I'd get either rejection emails or I get an interview and then the rejection email. And maybe I'm just really bad at interviews, but I don't know. A lot of the times I thought I did fairly well. Now, there were definitely a few interviews that really went down into the technical side. And, you know, when you work for a company for 2 years and they don't let you do any technical stuff and you have to pretty much teach yourself on your own how satellite systems work, And then you get an interview with a satellite systems company and they say, well, do you have any experience in blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And they're like, oh, okay, click. And then they hang up on you and you go, well, I guess there's nothing I could really do about that. And you pretty much have to go out, and if you want a job with a satellite company, you have to research all that information. And it's basically like you have to go back to school again. And it seems unfair when you've worked for a company for 2 years and you really haven't gained any technical skills in anything. And that just goes back to the whole, technical skills really don't matter in engineering. If you really want to succeed in your career, you kind of have to start going towards management, but that's a whole other story. I had reached a point where it was super hard for me to get an engineering job because I had a job that really didn't do any sort of engineering whatsoever. So my only option was to go, reach out to a recruiting company, and they would go find a job for me. And some recruiting companies are weird because they'll take your resume and they'll totally overhaul it. They'll like copy and paste a few things, and then they'll delete a bunch of stuff, and they go, okay, this is pretty much what I need. And I actually received a copy of the resume that guy used to get me the job that I have now. And a lot of the stuff on there, I'm just like, dude, what are you talking about? He put down a bunch of stuff on electromagnetism that I've never done. And I was just like, so you're basically lying for me. Okay. But it just seemed like he really exaggerated a lot of the stuff that I did. And I was kind of like, I don't know if this is going to work out, dude, because you're kind of just lying on my behalf. So it was just odd. But I got the job, and honestly, I don't really do much of anything. It's just filling out forms and making sure pinouts look right, and that's about it. Which I guess sounds like a pretty good deal, but if you read the 4-Hour Work Week, it's not. In any case, so that's pretty much how I got my first job. And there's upsides and not. Like I said, the upsides are it's easier to get a job that way because there's a company pretty much rooting for you. And which is nice, but the thing is they get a cut of your paycheck in that sense. So when I did my first subcontracting job, I was making $46,000, which is probably about at least 20% under the national average for an entry-level electrical engineer. And a lot of the people that I worked with were, electrical engineering technology majors, which is generally considered slightly under electrical engineering because electrical engineering has a lot more design and theory, whereas electrical engineering technology has some of the design and theory, but it also focuses more on hands-on stuff like soldering, and it's more of a technician major almost in a weird way. So I was making the same as these electrical engineering technicians or technology majors, and it just seemed really unfair to me. But at the same time, I was like, well, I've got a job, so whatever. And then at my first job, I guess you can call this Corey's story, Corey, if you want. But at my first job, I had fixed a major issue they were having on the manufacturing plant where they were loading software onto a EEPROM and it wasn't working all the time. And I spent about a month fixing one general issue, and then I spent like another 3 months fixing another major issue that was related to that. And I ended up getting a reward for it, which was actually really cool. They're like, hey, you did a really cool thing, so here's a little piece of paper that says good job, and we'll give you a $100 bonus or whatever. So they give you like pretty much a check that says here's $100 for being a good boy. And then the problem was, since I was not a real people employee, I was a subcontractor, 20% of that check was given to my recruiting company, which was stupid because it's like, well, what did they do? All they did was hire me and then put me in a cubicle. They didn't sit there with me and analyze the problem. So they ended up getting, I think it was $100. So they ended up getting $20 and I got $80, which is like, okay, whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, well, dude, like, what the fuck? It's kind of messed up. They're taking 20% of what I'm making just because I'm not a real people employee. It's just dumb. So after working there for over a year, because every time you do a subcontracting job like this as well, you'll always hear stories about oh, well, this person worked here for a year and then he got hired as a direct employee, or this person worked here for 6 months and he got hired as a direct employee. And there were a lot of stories like that being spread around. So I said, okay, well, I've worked here for over a year now, and I've done a bunch of different things fixing all these yield issues, and I haven't been given an offer for direct employment. So what's going on? So me and actually one of my coworkers sat down with our manager. Well, individually, not together. So he had his own little meeting and I had my own little meeting. And I sat down with my manager and said, hey, you know, I kind of like working here, actually. It's just, you know, the pay's not great and the benefits are shitty. That's another part of recruiting companies, is your benefits are never going to be as good as the actual direct employees. Especially where I am right now. I've got health insurance called First Health. Nobody knows what the hell First Health is, and the benefits are probably some of the worst benefits I've seen ever. I actually have a card here. I got First Health, Care Marks. Oh, this doesn't have all of them. But it's through Essential Staff Care, and it's basically they group all your insurance together in one thing. So you get First Health, and I think you get Dentamax. It's like all this generic Kmart brand fucking insurance companies. And you basically call a doctor and you say, hey, I want to set up an appointment. They're like, oh, what insurance do you have? And I'm like, First Health. They say, did you just make that up? And I'm like, no, it's an actual insurance company, and their site led me to your, you know, place of business or whatever. And they say, oh, okay, we must cover it then. It's like, the people don't even know that they cover that insurance. It's crazy. So anyways, the insurance benefits are not good. I mean, the ones I actually had in Fort Wayne weren't horrible. Aerotech actually has some decent benefits. The one I'm through now is like PGS Worldwide, and it's really, the benefits aren't good, but the pay is really nice. So there's a trade-off there. Whereas Fort Wayne, like with Aerotech, the benefits were okay and the pay was garbage. Like, there were so many times where I'm like, I should be making way more than this right now for what I'm doing. And I've talked about that with my manager and everything. They pretty much just said no all the time. So I sat down with the direct employee manager, like the BAE Systems manager, not the recruiting company. And I said, hey, you know, would there ever be a chance anytime soon for actual hire to be a direct employee? Because I'm kind of getting tired of being a subcontractor and kind of being treated as a subhuman. And he gave me a wishy-washy answer of, well, probably not anytime soon. It probably won't be till 2019, which is still another year from now. And back then that was about 2015 when he said that. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to work here for another 4 years as a subcontractor just so that you might give me a direct employee position. So after that conversation, I said, fuck it. And I started applying to jobs all day. I actually got into some bad habits of showing up to work late, because I actually reached a point where I kind of wanted to get fired, because I just got bored working there, and I felt like it was soul crushing. I was doing the same thing over and over again. It was boring, and I just hated myself for being there, and hated calling myself an engineer because I didn't feel like I was doing any engineering. So I was just on the internet a lot at my job, just applying at other jobs. Like, I was pretty much getting paid to apply to other jobs. And eventually I heard back from BAE Systems, but in Utah. So I ended up getting a direct employee job from BAE Systems out in another state, which I didn't even think I was going to get. But they thought I was impressive and they hired me. And that's how I got into defense contracting from there, because Fort Wayne was more commercial based. It was working on circuit cards for 777s and 747s and all that. Once I started moving out west, I started doing more defense contracting, and that's a whole other story, where defense contracting is pretty much America's biggest welfare check. And I would not recommend defense contracting for anyone unless you're doing some sort of specialized research. But that's just a whole other soul crushing career. So, I mean, that's pretty much my take on recruiting companies and subcontracts. It's very hard to tell at first whether or not it's a good company you should be working for. So, with my company right now, PGS Worldwide, it's a fairly decent company. but the contract's only for a year, whereas the Aerotech job was kind of like an indefinite contract. Just whenever you get hired as a direct employee, they'll let you go. And this one is like, well, we're going to have you on contract for a year, and I'm sure as long as you do a good job and they still don't hire you as a direct employee, they'll keep you on contract. But the scary part is, like, if there are layoffs in your company, they're going to lay off the contractors before any direct employees. It just financially makes sense. So at my current job, if you do a really good job, they'll hire you within 6 months. And then if you do a pretty average job, they'll hire you within a year, as long as all the contracts are in order. That's another thing about defense contracting. It's people always say, "Oh, engineering's so stable." It's like, it actually really isn't. Like, engineers get laid off all the time. But the plan here is that they'll try to hire me as a direct employee probably by the end of July of this year. And if that doesn't work out, then maybe it'll be later on. I'm actually almost at a point where if they give me the offer, I might just say no, because I really just don't like what I'm doing right now, and I'm trying to learn software development. And I'm starting to think that maybe going into software development as a career might be a better fit for me. And I just really don't like doing defense contracting anymore. So I kind of just want to leave the whole sector completely and maybe go back to commercial, where it's a little more exciting. I shouldn't say that, but it's different. And not every job's going to be exciting, obviously, but I want something that, because software development's actually been kind of somewhat exciting for me just on my own. But I mean, obviously, if you turn into a job, it might become boring. But that's a whole other story. So I'm trying to think of red flags to look out for when you try to get a job through a recruiting company. I mean, obviously, one thing you want to look for is go to their website. Like, when I got this current job through PGS Worldwide, I kind of already knew that it wasn't going to be that great. Just from what I was reading, it's literally run by like 5 people, and it's like a small recruiting company out of Montana or something like that. And I mean, they're good people and everything. It's just they can't really provide the best benefits for an employee. And don't get me wrong, the pay is actually really good. Like, this is the highest I've been paid in a long time. But the benefits are like, it's just embarrassing, honestly. And then the Fort Wayne, Indiana one, they were okay, but some of the red flags was just like, sometimes it just didn't seem like the recruiting people knew what they were talking about. I mean, one of the big ones, like I mentioned earlier, was I never had an interview with the actual company I was going to be working for. All my interviews, I think, it was like 2 interviews I had, were with Aerotech, the recruiting company, and not with BAE Systems, the actual company I would be working with. Again, it's just hard to tell, because like any job, they advertise the job as being amazing, and then you get there and it's like, this is not amazing. Obviously, when you first get a job, you want to talk to all your coworkers and say, hey, do you really like working here? Is there something you would like to change? Or what are the good parts of working here? And sometimes it's hard to get an honest answer out of people, especially when you don't know them at first. You kind of want to build some rapport up with them. And that's kind of what I've done at my current job, where I talk to people and try to, create profiles in my head of, okay, Andrew does this thing, and he says that he likes working here, but his actions say otherwise. Like, you kind of have to learn to read people at a certain point in order to find out whether or not the job's good. So you definitely want to get people's opinions and see how they react to certain things. And I've had a lot of times where I just ask people, hey, do you like working here? And they say yes. And then a month later, they quit. It's like, okay, so you clearly didn't like working here. Like the one job I had in Utah, I worked there for 6 months and I could not stand it, so I had to leave. And the one person I talked to, he was going to go be a physics teacher. And I said, well, do you even like working here? He said, well, yeah, it's all right. And then he left, and I was texting him like, dude, I think you just lied to me, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, I really hated working there. And I was like, God damn it, really? It was just really frustrating. So unfortunately, that method can be a little more challenging, just asking people, because almost everybody's first response is going to say, yeah, of course I like working here. Mm-hmm, yeah, totally. Ignore the tears. They're tears of happiness. So again, you just have to gauge people and see how they react, and just, as in anything in life, it's not easy. You got to put some effort into figuring out whether or not this is going to be the right career for you. And, you know, honestly, in my opinion, if the job doesn't seem right and you have other offers on the table, just fucking quit. Because, like, it might reflect poorly on your resume, or maybe not even put it on your resume at that point. But if you're working there for 2 months and you absolutely hate working there, then why even go there? Like, I get that money's important and everything. And again, this goes back to reading this book, The 4-Hour Work Week. It's like, don't work a job that leaves you with a crushed soul, because you'll just feel dead inside all the time, and you'll end up spending all that money that you are making just getting drunk on weekends and trying to forget that you work a shitty job. And it sucks. So you just gotta do what you gotta do, and if you're willing to put up with the shittiness just for the paycheck and then eventually retiring at the end, then good for you, I guess. That's the way you want to live your life, then go for it. I'm reaching a point where I don't want to save up all this money and then reach a point where I'm too old to do all the things I wish I had done when I was younger. It just doesn't make any sense, really. Like, retirement should really be treated as more of an insurance than a goal, which, again, they talk about what's his name? Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss talks about it in his book. I would definitely recommend reading that book. I've only let's see how many pages I'm really into. I'm only 57 pages into it, and I already relate with this book on an existential level. So, in any case, I think I'm just going to leave the video here. Let me know if you guys want me to talk more about recruiting companies and subcontracting. I think I've pretty much hit all the basics, where you're never going to get as good as benefits as a direct employee. Watch out for red flags where people are... I've actually recently called that company back in Fort Wayne because I needed references for my current job. And they said that the people that I knew who were subcontractors planning on being direct employees are still subcontractors to this day. It's been 3 years. Like, if it's been... Honestly, in my opinion, if it's been 1 year as a subcontractor and they still haven't hired you as a direct employee, they're not going to hire you as a direct employee, and you should run as fast as you can, because that means management just doesn't give a crap. They just want to cut costs on your employment. Benefits aren't as good. Now there are some other good benefits to being a contractor, where if I work overtime, I get 1.5 times my salary. So as soon as I go above the 40 hours, I get time and a half. Whereas a direct employee who works overtime, they actually have to donate 10 of their hours before they start making. And they don't even make time and a half. They make just more money. And it's like, that doesn't even make any sense at all. Which our company just recently changed, so that might change as well. But it's really donating 10 hours. It's like, no, I'm not donating my time. My time is more valuable than that. But because there's a certain point where if you like your job, then you should do what you can to get the projects done and everything because you enjoy them. But there's another point where you have to reach where you say, well, how valuable is my time? Because I want to go home and be able to work on some side projects, or I want to go home and socialize with people, meet new people, make some friends, party, do whatever you want to do outside of work. Because one of the biggest problems I have with America in general is this work mindset of you should work yourself to death. And if you ever take vacation time, you're looked down on, which I think Japan's kind of similar in that sense as well. But, I mean, it's one of the biggest reasons why America doesn't even have mandatory leave for people, because everybody just wants to do work more and more. And, you're frowned upon if you take a vacation, especially if you take like 2 vacations in a year. Oh my God, everyone's like, oh, he's lazy and he has no work ethic. It's like, dude, the reason I take vacations is so that I can come back to work refreshed with a new mindset. Again, that's a whole other video, and I've already spent half an hour rambling about random stuff. So, Again, let me know if you want me to go into more detail or if there's something I missed, because I'm sure there's plenty of stuff I missed. When I make these videos, I just kind of go off of the seat of my pants, so I don't even know. Most of the times I just turn the camera on and whatever happens, happens. So if you guys want me to talk more in detail, maybe I'll actually do some more research and look into it some more. But these are just anecdotal. So this is just my personal experience with subcontracting and recruiting companies. After a year of not getting a job and then finally asking a recruiting company for help, they got me a job. So I honestly think recruiting companies should always be a last resort. If you really can't find a job in engineering, then you can try to get a job through a recruiting company, and you might just have to leave states as well. So in any case, guys, I appreciate your support as always, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.